Yes, we'll start this way and we'll move.
And I heard the gentleman talking about reconsider flying into Chicago. But is there some feeling among all of you that perhaps a boycott is in order of the airline itself?
Well, I'm not going to use the term boycott, but I will say this. Until further notice, I won't be flying United. And I think that that probably expresses the sentiment of everybody standing here. There comes a time when you have to take a stand. It may inconvenience you, but you have to take a stand. And we're taking a stand. Yes. I saw a hand over here. Yes.
Have you made efforts to talk to the CEO or anybody from United, and have they responded to you?
Well, as you well know, this occurred just recently. We do plan to communicate. We will be forwarding a letter to them, and we'll express much of what we've expressed here today, a good deal of it. And we're anxious to hear and receive a response from them. But I can say this. I just think for the CEO to make the statement that he made, supporting the actions that took place, is something that has to be corrected. He has to tell the truth and say that this was not good policy to do what was done on that plane. He has to do this. I don't ask him to apologize. I ask him to tell the truth and say that this was wrong. The next question, please. Yes.
Two things. Is there any congressional action that is possible, investigation? And what do you think about the word reaccommodation?
Yes, that word has caused a good deal of consternation, reaccommodation. We'd like to get a better definition of what it means, but as it was implemented, it causes us a lot of concern. You can't take back a seat from people who have paid for it. You have to buy it. They own it and you have to buy it. Now, they don't own it such that you can't negotiate it away, but you just can't decide that if no one is willing to give up a seat, we're just going to forcibly evict someone from a plane. We expect people to be treated with a certain level of decency, regardless as to where you're from, regardless as to your race, your ethnicity, your gender, your standing in society. You have to be treated with a certain level of dignity and humanity. And we want to see this occur. People ought to be respected. You don't lose your constitutional rights when you board an airplane in the United States of America. You still maintain your right to some level of due process before you have a property right taken from you. I know that they have information on tickets that would give them an edge, but Professor Douglas, former dean of the law school at Texas Southern University, former president of Texas Southern University, has indicated that this is a one-sided affair and it needs to be balanced. This is what he said, and I agree. And to the final part of your concern, I think that we do have to, in Congress, review this. We have to review what the rights of passengers on planes. And we have to review this circumstance. We have a president who tweets about things that he believes to be important. I think a good many people would differ with him on some of the things that he tweets about. He ought to tweet about this. He ought to have a position on this. This is something that impacts America, not just that one person on the plane. And I expect the president, who seems to have no problem getting involved in issues that are less than foreign affairs, issues that are not related to war and peace, I think that he ought to concern himself with the behavior of people on that plane and the lack of expressions of diplomacy and taking proper efforts to make sure that people are not harmed when they have to give up a seat on a plane. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm a news reporter with China Press. Congressman, thank you for this great opportunity to unite the mainstream media and Asian media together. My question is like this. Let me call that guy is called a puller, because I'm not sure if that guy is a police officer or employee because he doesn't wear the police officer's jacket. And I know the root cause is by the overbooking of the United Airlines. But if this law probably is enforcement officer can process properly, will not trigger this, people's concern. So what advice do you have to that officer in this situation?
The crew were charged with the responsibility of enforcing bad policy. The security officer was policing bad policy. All of the people on that plane witnessed bad policy. It's bad policy that we really have to deal with. If this culminates with the crew being punished or a security officer being punished and no one in the boardroom being held accountable, then we will not have brought justice to this circumstance. This is about the boardrooms and the policies there as much as it is about what actually took place. We have to have people in boardrooms made accountable. They get high salaries. This CEO is making millions of dollars per year. When you include his bonuses, he's making over $7 million a year. He ought to make decisions that are much more sensitive to the circumstances that they are having to deal with if he's going to continue to make $7 million plus a year as a CEO. He can do better. We can do better. And our community expects better. This is the United States of America. Yes.
If I could ask you one more question, and Dr. Douglas, you might want to answer this as well. As you said, that the underlying problem, flights are overbooked, they're oversold, and this is not the first time that a flight has been overbooked and people have been asked to take money and take the next one. Do you think with that playing a part in this incident, do you think that there ought to be a policy against overselling a flight?
Well, let's deal with this circumstance because they didn't really follow what is perceived to be the policy at this point because they allow people to get on the plane and to be seated. Normally that kind of thing takes place and they get some sense of what they're going to do before people are seated. And then once people are seated, they have a ceiling that they usually go to. They did not get to that ceiling with their offer. So they really didn't follow the protocols as they have articulated them, as I understand it. However, to your question, I think overbooking is an acceptable way of doing business if you're willing to buy the seat back and not take it back. I think you can overbook. I've been on many flights that have been overbooked, and when they were overbooked, they made offers to people to accept a later flight with an understanding that you would be compensated in some way. That's acceptable. By overbooking, they can keep the price of fares down. We understand what overbooking is all about. But you don't overbook and then have a ham-handed approach to dealing with the overbooking that you have caused to come into being. You have to have an even-handed approach, not a ham-handed approach. You have to have a hand of justice approach, and that was not done. So we hope that they will take a different approach in the future, and if they do not, we'll have to take a different approach in Congress in terms of how we allow airlines to approach people when the airline itself has created the circumstance that has to be dealt with. Dr. Douglas.
Economic decision for the airlines to overbook, and I understand that based on the economic decision, it's a prudent way to run an airline. Before deregulation, when I used to fly and they were overbooking, they never had a problem. Because before deregulation, if you got bumped, you got a free ticket anywhere in the continental United States that the airline flew. So if you were flying from Houston to Oklahoma and they needed a seat, and they said, we need somebody to give up a seat, people ran to the counter because you could get a free ticket to Seattle if you wanted to. The airline decided it was cheaper to give you $200 or $300 rather than a free ticket. Now, I say go back to the old way. I tell you, if they go back to the old way, they won't have a problem with people giving up their seats.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
I was wondering, will we have any action in Houston area, such as a parade?
Well, protests. My suspicion is that it could easily occur, but it depends on how quickly United reacts, how quickly they will seek to perpetrate a justice now. They have the opportunity to correct an injustice. And if they do so quickly, I think that this can be resolved quickly. But if they do not, there is a likelihood that you'll see protests. That's my guess. And by the way, I'm a person who believes in protest. I protest, and it wouldn't surprise, I hope it wouldn't surprise any of you if you see me protesting if this is not corrected. Your congressman is likely to be out there protesting because this is an injustice that has to be corrected. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you think there's any ethnic issues in this problem?
Well, I think that this is bigger than ethnicity. This is why we've consistently said that this is not about a person's ethnicity, your gender, your sexuality, your familial status. It's not about any of the things that cause us to become subsets in society. It really is about being fair and treating human beings with a greater degree of dignity and respect, regardless as to who you are or where you're from. You are owed a certain level of dignity and respect. Now, having said that, we want to know how he was selected. We want to know more than it was a random process. Those are words. We want that random process explained so that we can know how the finger was pointed to him as opposed to the many other passengers that were on that plane. We're not calling this an act against a specific ethnicity, but we are saying we need the empirical evidence of how he was selected. And then after we get the empirical evidence, we'll have additional comments. Any other questions? Okay, if there are none, I want to thank all of you for coming on very short notice. I know there are many stories that you have to cover, and I want to let you get back to them. Has the president tweeted anything since we...